Welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be focusing on using the Pythagorean theorem to find a missing side of a right triangle. We're going to show that mastery in class by scoring at least a 70% on an exit ticket. Hopefully you have the note sheet in front of you. If you don't, take out a blank sheet of paper and we'll get you a fresh one tomorrow. Now, when we talk about a right triangle, we have specific parts that we need to know the difference between. If we look, sides A and B are called your legs. They are the sides that make the right angle. Side C, or the side opposite the right angle, is called your hypotenuse. And those are important to know because when we talk about using our formula, we have to know which side is which. The Pythagorean theorem is only used on right triangles, so we can't use them if it's an equilateral triangle, an isosceles, unless it has that right angle. Now, your formula, you've seen it in algebra because we've had to manipulate it. But a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and b, and it's important to keep in mind, are your legs, and c is always going to be your hypotenuse. And this is important because if you change it up, it's going to change your whole answer to the problem. Now, in order to prove a right triangle, if you are given three different lengths, you still use the Pythagorean theorem, and you have to make sure that they equal. Your hypotenuse is always your longest side. So in this case, 17 is going to be my C. It doesn't matter between 8 and 15 which one's my A and B. So we're going to say 8 squared plus 15 squared is equal to 17 squared. Well, 8 squared is 64, 15 squared is 225, and 17 is 289. If I add 64 and 225, I get 289, and 289 equals 289, so yes, it forms a right triangle. If I look at example 2, again, we just have to make sure that our hypotenuse is our longest side. So 12 is going to be my C. I'm going to call A 5 and B 9. So again, if we use our formula, we get 5 squared plus 9 squared, and that needs to equal 12 squared. That becomes 25 plus 81 and 144. Well, 25 plus 81 gives me 106, and in this case, 106 does not equal 144. So no, those three sides do not make a right triangle. Again, example 3, A, B, and C, where C is our hypotenuse and our longest side, so C is going to equal 25. 7 squared plus 24 squared equals 25 squared. I get 49 plus 576 equals 625. If I add them together, we get 625 equals 625. So yes, that does form a right triangle. Example 4, again, C has to be our longest side, so 18 is C. 10 squared plus 14 squared equals 18 squared. So that's 100 plus 196 equals 324. Well, that gives me 296 equals 324. We know that's not true, so no, a right triangle cannot be formed from those sides. Now, when it comes to finding a missing side, we're still using the same formula, but now we're going to use a little bit more algebra. In this case, when you're given a triangle, start by labeling your sides. C has to be your hypotenuse, opposite from your right angle. A and B, it doesn't matter which one is which. And then use your Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Well, if I plug it in, I have 8 squared plus 7 squared equals X squared. We're going to combine our terms. 64 plus 49 gives us 113. Equals x squared. And yes, it equals x squared, but we want to know for x, so the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root. And in this case, if we round it to the nearest tenth, x is going to equal 10.6, or the square root of 113. If we look at number 6, again, start by labeling your hypotenuse, which is always the side opposite your right angle. And use your formula. 18 squared plus 15 squared equals x squared. This becomes 324 and 225, which gives me 549. Again, we got it down to x squared, so we need to take the square root of both sides. So x is going to equal approximately 23.4. And double check yourself. Make sure your hypotenuse is always longer than your two legs. If it's shorter, something went wrong in your math. Now, if we look at number 7, again, start by labeling that hypotenuse. And it doesn't matter A or B, but if we notice in this case, we're solving for one of the legs instead of the hypotenuse. We still want to set up the formula the same way. So we're going to say 3 squared plus B is x, so that becomes your x squared, equals 11 squared. Becomes 9 plus x squared, and it equals 121. Well, this is where the algebra comes in. It's just solving a two-step equation. We're going to subtract 9 on both sides, and we're going to get x squared equals 112. From here, we're going to take the square root of both sides. X is going to equal approximately 10.6. And this goes back to checking your work. In this case, because it's a leg, it cannot be longer than our hypotenuse. And if I check, 10.6 is shorter than 11, so that can work. Example 8, 30 is my hypotenuse. I'm going to call A and B. A is x, so we're going to put x squared plus 24 squared equals 30 squared. Well, from here, it stays x squared plus 24 squared becomes 576 and 900. We're still going to use our inverse operations and solve on both sides. From here, we need to take our square root. In this case, x is going to be a whole number, and it is going to be 18. Now, I want you to try example 9 on your own. There will be a question on there. You can plug your answer in. When it comes to word problems, please make sure to draw the picture out. I know it seems simple, but make sure you draw it out so that we can label all of our sides properly. It asks, number 10, find the length of a rectangle that has a diagonal of 25 feet and a width of 15 feet. That means I need to find my height. From here, label your A, B's, and C's. And we can use Pythagorean theorem. Our final step, taking our square root, gives me x is equal to 20. So that tells me my missing side over here is equal to 20. Number 11, again, a 20-foot ladder is leaned against a wall. Well, if I have my right triangle, if my ladder is leaning against the wall, that's my hypotenuse. The base of the ladder is 8 feet from the wall. How high up the wall? So I'm finding my height. Again, label your sides, and then you can use your Pythagorean theorem. If you solve it all the way down and do the math correctly, you should get x squared equals 336. Well, if I take the square root of both sides, x is going to equal 18.3. I want you to try number 12 on your own. Again, there will be a question in there for you to solve it. We will go over that in class tomorrow. Bring your notes and any questions you have to class, and I look forward to seeing you then.